Let's see there in Colossians chapter 2, verse 5. Where Paul uses an experience or exposes an experience he had. It says, "For though I am absent in the flesh, yet I am with you in spirit." Notice here, the apostle uses a term that is also repeated in the first letter to the Corinthians, which we are about to read. But that is why the theme, the omnipresence that this gospel produces. When the apostle Paul managed to have some disciples who submitted to his teachings, remember that Paul was the one who promoted the unity of the Spirit. And then he was the only one who taught in those times. Timothy submitted to him. The others submitted to him. But it was what he taught, the form and the way he taught. That's why he says, "Here I send you Timothy, who will remind you of the way I teach." But it's not that Timothy was going to teach something different. Then what happens? That when they were subject to Paul in those times, Paul said, "For though I am absent in the flesh." Here the apostle does not need the flesh. And in fact, this gospel is so powerful that when it gets into someone's mind, the bodily presence, the physical part, hey, it has no power other than emotions that we saw the apostle. The apostle Paul sometimes said, "For those who have never seen my face," right there in that chapter, he uses the term, "For I want you to know what a great conflict I have for you and those in Laodicea, and for as many as have not seen my face in the flesh." Well, in those times, the face of the apostle was necessary. Do you know why? Because there was no videos. Science had not increased. And they wanted to know what he looked like. And then seeing his face was an edification. However, not to see his face because it was pretty ugly. Do you remember that disease he had in his eyes? It was not because of the physical part. It was that when they saw his face, they heard his mouth, they heard his message, they heard his speech. It is not like in my case, you do not need to see me. I don't have to be at the main headquarters or at the other headquarters. I do not have to be there physically, because physically what you are going to see is my flesh, but it is what comes out of my mouth, which is what enters your mind. Jose Luis, the flesh does not enter your mind. What enters your mind is the gospel that Jose Luis preaches. That's what enters. And that is the only thing that does you good. That is why Paul said, bodily presence edifies little. The letters support everything. Now, this omnipresence that produces this gospel. Paul says, "Look, however, I am not there." I can say the same thing today. Look, I am not there physically. However, I am there spiritually. My spirit is with you. Well, today I'm ahead of Paul because Paul didn't have videos. You can at least see me express myself. And you don't need to see me physically, even though one rejoices so much when he sees his brothers and sisters and shares, but there is no need for that. The important thing is that you listen to the message of grace.